I'm crashing the party, in case you hadn't noticed from your program, but I am a huge fan of this organization. The World Affairs Council of Connecticut has done so much to educate so many people and create more awareness. And I see people here, I'm not going to name names because you know the old saying that the people whom you fail to mention will never forget, the people you mention will disregard it. And so I'm just going to say about Admiral Richardson that he's been a longtime hero of mine. He has two sons who are serving now in the Navy. I had a son about the same time who was serving in the Marine Corps in Afghanistan as a combat infantry officer, and another son who served as a Navy SEAL. We didn't have any folks in submarines, but he's forgiven me for that. But I've been at a lot of commissionings with him, and the work that he's done over the years to make sure that our Navy has enough submarines. And as he has said, the issues about supply chain, about the production, our goal is still 2 submarines a year. I'm on the Armed Services Committee as well as the Veterans Affairs Committee. I spend a lot of time working on submarines. And all the world knows that undersea warfare is where we still have clear superiority over our adversaries. They're trying to emulate us, but we still have the strongest, most versatile, most stealthy undersea warfare platforms in the world, and we're very fortunate to be here in Connecticut, the submarine capital of the world, in Groton. That's where they make them. And if you haven't been to a commissioning or a christening, you should go, because it's a very inspiring event with the workers as well as the sailors, both of them essential to our undersea warfare capability. And you may think this is all kind of surplusage, but actually there's a point, which is, as the Admiral said, we need more workforce. Goodwin College, Goodwin University helps to produce the folks who provide that workforce. We need more of this kind of training. When I'm at the Pentagon and I'm arguing for more submarines, or with my colleagues, when I'm trying to bolster the case to include more in our budget, the most common question I'm asked is, you're going to have enough workers? You're going to have enough welders, electricians, carpenters, people with the skills to do this work? Goodwin is where a lot of those skills will be provided. And it may not be as glamorous as the commissionings and the other formal ceremonies, but the work of producing submarines is really a technological marvel. It is a technological marvel. I want to talk a little bit about Ukraine, which is also related to submarines. That may seem to you completely ridiculous, but the fact of the matter is, before Russia invaded Ukraine, our focus was on the Pacific, and it should be. It was on China, and it should be. My colleague and friend, John McCain, used to say about Russia that Russia is essentially a gas station with nuclear weapons run by a bunch of thugs. Russia has an economy the size of, what, Italy, Mexico, and probably about half what it was, and it has now a military force that is half of what it was as a result of what Ukraine has done. Its armored forces have been cut by a third. It's lost a third of its tanks, a third of its armored vehicles. Its forces have been degraded by Ukraine. The United States has not lost one person Not one casualty, not one death of anyone in uniform. We've provided a lot of aid to Ukraine, but it's about 3% of our total military budget. This year, our military budget, if we can get it through the Congress, will be approaching $900 billion. $900 billion. So the $88 billion that we provided, a lot of it military, but that includes humanitarian assistance, is a fraction. The military part of that is a fraction of our total military budget. And so I would suggest we have gotten our money's worth out of our invasion, out of our resistance to Putin's murderous, savage invasion. But the point about submarines is that they are essential to our Pacific deterrence. And that was our focus. And it still must be, which is why we've entered into the AUKUS agreement. UK, Australia, ourselves, 3 submarines. Australia is going to get them. They're going to run them. And it's driving China crazy. Literally. China is off the wall because we are mobilizing allies in that part of the world to resist China. It thought we could never do it. And one of the reasons why we're able to do it is Ukraine. Our ability to pull together NATO. Memories are short, but I'm sure everybody in this room remembers what NATO was like before President Biden became president, before the invasion. NATO was on the verge of splintering, disintegrating. And nobody gets it better than our European allies. I've been to Ukraine 4 times in the last 18 months, 4 times. By the way you get to Ukraine, I'm sure you've read about it, is you fly to Munich or Warsaw, then go to the border, and then take an overnight train, 12 hours on the train to get to Kyiv. And on all 4 of those times that I've gone, I've met with President Zelensky, his top leadership, people, Ukrainians who are resisting, who are living through the bombing. And of course, their determination is incredible, their bravery. I don't need to tell you how inspiring it is. I met with President Zelensky yesterday in Washington, and his message was, we are strong and unified, you need to be strong and unified. And he's determined, he'll fight with, as he said to me on my first meeting, we'll fight with pitchforks if we need to. But NATO is now unified because they see the threat to them. And we need to make Americans aware of what the threat is to our national security and how Ukraine has brought together allies in the Pacific, South Korea, Japan, Australia, now willing to enter into agreements like AUKUS because they understand the United States will be there. The United States is a reliable and dependable ally. So as much as we're degrading Russia, in my view, the equally important accomplishment of what we've done in Ukraine is to show the world we're a reliable ally. We'll have your back. And that's what is so important about continuing. We all know that Putin's dream, his vision, is to reestablish the old Soviet Union, which is the old Russian Empire. If you know any of the history of that part of the world, you know the ambition that he has. It's his lifelong ambition. It was destroyed when he was a KGB agent in East Germany, and he saw the Soviet Union crumble right before him in real time then. That's his vision. He will keep going. Poland knows it. Romania, Moldova. Ask Finland and Sweden why they've decided to join NATO. I don't need to ask. You know the answer. Because for them, Russia is a threat. It has totally decimated the norms that date from World War II. The norms, the rules, the traditions. Blasted them. Invasions of weaker states, that was the 1930s, and that's where we are now. So I think there is a national security imperative for us in Russia. And by the way, there's also a moral imperative. On one of my trips, I went to Bucha, which is right outside Kyiv. It's where the Russians were halted. It's about a 10-minute car ride from Kyiv, from Zelensky's bunker. That's how close the Russians came. There's an abandoned Russian tank, several of them, in the town. There's also a mass grave where Russian soldiers tied the hands of women and children behind their back and then shot them in the head. Not a few, hundreds. That's the history of the 1930s again. That moral imperative also extends to children. As you've read, hundreds of thousands of children have been taken from occupied territory in Ukraine, taken into Russia, put in camps. Now, the latest report, last day or so, taken to Belarus. There's a reason why Vladimir Putin has been indicted by the International Court of Criminal Justice. He's the head of state, indicted by the ICC, an arrest warrant. He can't travel to a lot of places around the world because he would be taken into custody. And rightly, this moral imperative is something that should animate us as well. And I'll just finish on this point. The Ukrainians don't want our troops. They're not asking for our sailors, our Marines, our troops. They're not asking for men and women in uniform. They're asking for the tools to win the war. I've advocated from the start that we should provide F-16s, and we're now doing it. I've advocated that we provide the Bradley and Stryker vehicles. More of them are in the latest package that the President just announced yesterday. The Abrams tanks, we need to provide more of them. They're essential to overcoming the fortifications, the trenches, and mines that have been built there. And of course, more drones, long-range artillery. I think we should provide the ATACMS, which reach 190 miles. The HIMARS are shorter-range artillery. More of them as well, and more of the munitions. And in that sphere of combat, we need a better supply chain as well, because our stockpiles of all of those weapons platforms have been drawn down. On munitions, for example, we don't have a lot of, we're going to our allies in Europe, and as one of the military leaders told me earlier this week, we're begging and borrowing 155s to send to the Ukrainians. We have to ramp up our production in all of those areas. But coming back to the first point, to deter aggression, whether it's against Taiwan by the Chinese, or by Putin, or by any other leader who would threaten the world order in the way that he has done, it is our military forces and our adherence to the commitments that we make that underlie our credibility. We need to be strong in those commitments. We need to be strong in our military forces. It includes submarines. It includes all of the weapons platforms that Ukraine needs. And I think that Ukraine is going to be a critical time for us. The Ukrainians are making progress. They've breached some of the defenses in the east around Bakhmut. They have also made progress in the south. They've taken the town of Robotyne. They're approaching Tokmak. If they can cut or reach the land bridge, it will be a major step. But the winter is coming, and the question is how much progress they can make before it and then how much they can do during it. But they can win. They can win if we provide them the support that they need, and it will be a critical point, a turning point in history if they do win. So thank you to all of you in uniform who are here today. Thank you all who are veterans. I suspect that those two groups encompass the majority of people here. Thank you for letting me barge in and speak with you a little bit, and keep up the great work. Thank you so much.